Hello everyone, I'm Shadowkiss, and welcome to my Thoughts Monday. So, without further ado, let's get started on today's video. Now, I put a poll on my Twitter, and you guys chose resin heads versus foam heads. So, let's get started with this. If you guys want to check in on more polls like this, please check the description. It will have my Twitter, my TikTok, and all my other social media you can find me on. Believe me, it's not a lot, but it's worth it. Foam heads and resin heads. Everybody loves their own preference for when it comes to fursuits. Now, personally, for me, I've seen foam heads, I've tried foam heads, and yes, I do have a foam head. In fact, it's this guy right here, which I have yet to do my video on. So, be on the lookout. That might be Wednesday's video or Friday, whichever one of the two, but believe me, you'll like it. And then resin heads. This is my preferred method of making a fursuit head, at least for me. Why? Because with resin heads, there's quite a few different things that make it awesome. Like, for example, it's the same material throughout. You just have resin in your hinges, you have resin as your head base, you have resin as your jaw set, as your eyes, pretty much everything. The only thing I do not like resin in is my nose, because if you go and you poke the nose on any other animal, like go up to your cat or your dog and you poke its nose, it doesn't feel hard and plastic-like. It is very fleshy. Or hell, if you don't have any pets, try poking your own right now. Yeah, there's a bit of a squish to it, isn't that? So, yeah, when you go, for me, I like using silicone for those, just as I do my paw pads, and except maybe feet paws. Feet paws, unless I used silicone or another fabric for my feet paws. Then I also do the same for my hand paws. So yeah, personally, silicone or whatever the job requires for hand and feet paws. But that's besides the subject. Foam heads have their uses, like they are lightweight, they are pretty breathable, but there's a problem I see with it. Downside is, because they breathe in so well, and depending on how much your jaw is open and all these other factors as far as breathability, chances are with all that foam, it's going to collect mold sooner or later. And that could shorten the life expectancy over, say, a resin head. Now, on the other hand, a resin head is a lot easier to clean, whereas in a foam head, as far as I can see, there's times where it just might not be as clean as you like it. But hey, if you give it regular cleanings, you might not have the same problem with that as you would a resin head. A foam head is lighter compared to a resin head. There is a weight difference, but it's so minuscule that for somebody like me who's jumped around as a scary werewolf kind of character or full-on wolf character, you don't realize much of the weight difference, but it's there. It's very much there. One thing I also notice is sculpting. Unless you do the same for each type, which I know Dream Vision Creations does, chances are you might be doing it the old way. Whereas you make a bucket and then you sculpt the head atop the bucket, which, yeah, it works, but unless you want to get the same consistent cast every time, because you want to keep making canines, or you want to keep making felines, foxes, sergals, you name it, chances are a lot of people have one built, which takes a lot of artistic skill to get the same look and feel every time by doing it by foam. Now, whereas in resin head, you can't take and go, well, I'm going to just take a chunk of resin and I'm going to sculpt it down. No, no, no. You have to build it up as a sculpt of some kind. You make a sculpture on top of an armature. You make a mold. You cast it. And a great example of this that I can give you guys is from Evil Slider 13's channel on how to make masks. Now, I know this isn't the same as making a fursuit head, but it gives you a lot of the same idea. But instead of using plaster for your mold, you make a rubber mold, usually silicone, and then you make like a plaster of Paris mother shell, and then usually with plaster bandages. And then you take that, you have your two sets, and then you cast resin in the inside. The cool thing with this, depending on what kind of silicone you use, because there's all kinds of molding silicone. There's those from Monster Makers, which is a pretty good place to start. There's those from Smooth On, which is probably a better place to start. A little more pricey, but still. And then, of course, the list goes on and on. In the end, if you really want to ask me, I prefer personally resin heads because they're sturdy. The spring, they're spring loaded, so that means every time you close your jaw, even if say your mouth was gaping wide open, it'll close right back up. I'm not so fond of doing this sort of thing with a foam head because every tutorial that I've seen uses elastic, and if anybody knows anything about elastic, it only takes so much before it'll snap. Whereas in a spring will take a lot more abuse before finally it either splits or it just doesn't work the same as it used to. And if it does, for any reason, get a bunch of sweat on there and it starts to rust and corrode and it makes all kinds of squeaking and squawking, it's a lot easier to fix, in my opinion, than it is to, say, put a whole bunch of new elastic in a jaw for a foam head. So, but then again, with the way how fursuits last, you would probably need to replace your bodysuit and your hand paws and your feet paws way before you would need to replace your head with a resin base. Again, these are just my thoughts, my opinions, and I've been making masks and creatures for, since 2010, so 9 years. And of course, again, it's not the same as making a fursuit, but they're pretty close and similar. So, that is a short my thoughts. If you guys want me to break it down and give the complete pros and cons from my perspective, please let me know it down in the comments below. I will make sure that happens. And until next time, stay fuzzy, my friends. I'll see you next time.